Solar PV Cast by Shift, a podcast exploring solar energy and the role it plays in improving our lives and our planet. Here's your host, Chris Palliser.
Yes, back with another podcast. First live podcast of 2025. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Chris, and I am joined by my friend Steve Unger, lead Microgrid Development at Shift. Steve, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to be here again.
2025, we're back at it, my friend.
Yep.
The goal of this podcast is education. Now, when I listen to a lot of other solar podcasts out there, I kind of get overwhelmed because there's a lot of tech talk, especially when it comes to batteries. And that's what this episode is going to be about today. The do's and the don'ts of batteries. But kind of this came about because of a specific situation. I was a fly on the wall in an email exchange between you and one of Shift's off-grid clients. And they had some great questions because we're in the winter now. And, and where we're located in British Columbia and Canada, the sun can't quite power your whole home for the winter. So you do need a generator. That's right. But that creates some fun times with batteries.
Exactly.
So we're going to dive into that today. I love what you did here. 2 truths and a lie about batteries. So I'm going to read 3 of them. And then we'll let you think about it while you're listening and while you listen to our conversation, and we'll circle back and cover them. Okay, so 2 truths and a lie. SOC is an accurate measure of the fullness of a battery. What does SOC stand for?
State of charge.
Okay, state of charge. So that's number 1. Number 2, it's not okay to turn off my generator when the inverter or BMS shows 100%. And BMS means?
Battery management system.
There we go. And fully charging my batteries on a regular basis is very important. Those are the 3. One of them is complete and utter BS. We'll get to that in a second. So, Steve, I love what you kind of opened here about batteries and how it's not necessarily about the battery failing, it's about them being murdered. So let's get into it. Explain that first.
Yeah, this was actually one of my gurus who said this, that batteries are seldom die. They're mostly killed. And they're typically killed by not taking care of them properly, not charging them properly. And that happens a lot more so in the winter than it does in the summer when we have ample sunlight. So Shift has had clients who've had batteries for 14 years, which is basically double as long as they should have lasted. But, they babied these batteries. We've also unfortunately had clients who have killed or murdered their batteries, in the first year.
Geez, and that's an expensive toy to break.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to, be killing thousands of dollars worth of batteries, especially, needlessly. Part of this whole situation is batteries are actually more chemical than they are electrical, right? Batteries are a series of chemistry, right? It's chemistry that governs how the battery works. Now, because it's a chemical reaction that happens within a battery, it's dictated, by temperature, by other environmental factors, not just all these things. So your battery changes who it is, what it is, depending on temperature and other characteristics.
It sounds like, the partner in a relationship.
Exactly. Exactly.
It depends on the environment of the home and what's happening and the internal whatever. Yeah. It's a living, breathing person, basically.
Sort of. And like a living, breathing person, it also changes over time, right? It wears out, it gets older, it deteriorates. And again, proper maintenance is important. You got to get exercise to keep your muscles and bones strong, or in this case, your plates. So today we're going to talk about how to get the most out of your batteries and some critical things. And ultimately, we'll circle back to those 2 truths and a lie. And hopefully everyone will figure it out by the time we're done.
Just to give some context for you listening. So there was a conversation. A client reached out to us. Shout out to Dale. They've been on the podcast before. Yeah. Great episode. Have a listen to Dale and Sarah. And they're totally off-grid. Yeah. And they're living a successful off-grid life. They have a family of 4, I think, and live a quote-unquote normal life. They're doing it. They're living off-grid with solar and batteries. But they were having an issue. And poor Dale was waking up in the middle of the night, had to turn on the generator manually because it wasn't firing up normally. Yeah. And then he had to kind of set the alarm for a couple hours later to go turn it off. And there was a charging issue. There was communication errors between. And so that's kind of where this came about. And
that's right. Yeah. And Dale wasn't the only one. There were several other clients. And this happens every December. You know, when the days get shorter, the days get colder, all of a sudden batteries aren't working the way that they were on a nice, you know, warm July sunny day.
Totally.
So, yeah. So a little bit of background here. First off, we'll start off. As we said, state of charge is the percentage of how full the battery is. So, you know, 0% up to 100%. Everybody loves state of charge. It's easy to understand. It seems pretty straightforward.
And where do you generally find the state of charge when you're looking at a battery?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Solar battery. I know on my phone, I see a little percentage bar at the top.
Totally.
Now, is that actually the battery, or is that the phone's computer telling me what the battery is?
That's exactly it. So you do see these things on either the inverter, the battery management system, on your phone, on other devices that are showing this. The problem is, though, that state of charge is not an empirical measure, right? It's not a physical characteristic of the battery, right? You can measure voltage, you can measure current, but you can't actually empirically measure state of charge.
Oh.
So state of charge is an estimate by a computer, whether it's your phone or the BMS or the inverter, of the amount of charge inside of a battery.
Okay. So how come the computer can't measure the voltage to get the empirical, if that makes sense?
Sure. It does. And the battery does exactly that. It measures a whole bunch of things.
Okay.
And in fact, the way it works is the computer will figure out what is the high watermark, what is the 100% mark of the battery.
Right.
And then it'll measure energy in and energy out. So kilowatt hours in, kilowatt hours out, or amp hours in, amp hours out. And then from that, it'll basically go up and down from that high watermark and guesstimate at where the battery state of charge is.
Right.
Right. But we live in the real world, not in the ideal world. So depending on the age of the battery and the resistance and the settings of the battery and the temperature of the day and all these other factors, the calibration point can get out of calibration.
Right.
So then, you know, 100% isn't 100% anymore. It might be like 95%.
So we might see 100%, but the battery, the chemical insides have not reached float, I believe it's called.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, basically it gets uncalibrated.
Right.
And at that point, the inverter or the BMS is using the wrong information as to charge up and down.
Right. So it turns the generator off because it thinks the battery's good to go.
Exactly. So important thing to remember is that state of charge is always an estimate.
Okay.
And it's as accurate an estimate depending on charging your batteries properly.
Right. Now that's kind of scary because, you know, as an anxious person like myself, it's always an estimate. So how do you know, and maybe you're going to get into this, how do you know, anxious guy, me going to bed, how do I know that the generator, if it has to come on in the middle of the night, is going to do it properly?
Yeah. So very good question. So like I said, the calibration point, and like I said, it depends on temperature. So for example, your battery loses capacity with temperature.
Right.
So at 0 degrees Celsius, like we're having here today in Victoria, your battery has lost 20 to 25% of its capacity. So if you think about it, the BMS had said, oh, this is 100% point. I'm assuming we have this much water in the bathtub. But all of a sudden, this morning, my bathtub just got 25% smaller.
And it doesn't read that.
Well, it does. The inverters, and they have it built into it.
Okay.
But it's not 100%, right?
Yeah.
It depends on the settings that you put into the inverter in the first place.
Right.
And of course, those settings, because the battery ages, change over time.
Of course.
Right. So, like I said, it all sounds great on paper, but we live in the real world. So yeah, you were asking, how do you know when a battery is full?
Yeah.
So most batteries go through 3 stages of charging. They start off in bulk, which is when you're trying to push as much energy into the battery as possible. So you're basically just, you know, feeding it power.
Do we push energy into the battery, or does the battery receive the energy?
Well, that's a little bit of both.
Okay.
But yeah, oftentimes the battery will receive the energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, give me more, give me more.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the first stage is really us pushing it in. It's called constant current. We're driving current into the battery. Once it gets through that and it gets up to its voltage, it goes into what's called absorb. And absorb is more of a constant voltage, in which is more of the battery taking current or taking power in.
Right.
So really good question. Now, the absorb stage is kind of when most of the maintenance happens to the battery as well. So in the case of a lead battery, over time, the plates in there can get sulfated, kind of like our teeth get plaque on them.
Okay.
And going through the absorb stage helps burn. Some people are probably going to be upset about me using that term, but whatever. Burn the plaque or the sulfates off the battery.
So it keeps it clean.
Yeah.
That's when it's in the absorb phase.
In the absorb phase.
So is that kind of like the fat burning phase when you're running? Your heart rate burns fat in that. If you run at the max heart rate, you're not burning fat. But if you run in that, 70% of your max heart rate, you're burning the fat. Yeah. That's how my mind just put that.
Yeah. Possibly. Now that's for lead batteries.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Now for lithium batteries, because you don't really have sulfuric acid in them anymore, you still need that stage because that's when all of the cells get balanced. So if you can imagine, a lithium ion battery is made up of a whole bunch, hundreds to thousands of cells. The cell at the top,
AA batteries.
Yeah, exactly. The cell at the top is going to get charged a little bit faster than the cell at the bottom.
Right.
Just because of distance and resistance and all this stuff. So you have to keep the charge going in, so you make sure everybody gets up to the same point.
Because the top one's going to be like, hey, I'm full. And the bottom one's going to be like, I'm not full. I need some.
Exactly. So then the BMS is also calibrating based on that. So if it sees the top one's full and says 100%, it may think, it's 100%. But the bottom one, like you said, might only be at 80. So you have to keep going, and you have to get, everything calibrated as well. So for lithium, the absorb stage is really about calibration and balancing.
Right. And how do you do the balance and calibration act? Is that just
the inverter will take care of doing that, and the BMS take care of doing that. So
Okay.
So then to get back to answer your question, a battery is typically considered full when the power going into the battery is less than 2% of the battery's capacity.
The power going into the battery is less than 2% of the battery's capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll get an example here. So let's assume we have a 10 kilowatt hour battery.
Okay.
2% of that is 200 watts.
Okay.
So if you see on whatever monitor you're using, that you have 200 watts or less going into your battery, then you can assume that your battery has left absorb and gone into float.
Okay. Now, the batteries that I use here at Shift in our community engagement is our solar house.
Yeah.
So often when I'm showing people the solar house and it's a beautiful sunny day, it's still only producing like 19 watts, 20 watts. Yeah. That's because the batteries are full and they're like, we don't need any more. We're just kind of like trickle charging.
Exactly. Yeah. So you'll always continue charging the battery because there's a little bit of trickle charge, because batteries lose energy
just by sitting there.
They self-discharge over time.
Right.
But basically once you get to that less than 200 watts in our case, the battery's considered to be full. And at that point, because it's full and the inverter and the BMSC we pretty much now at a constant power rating, we're going to say that's our 100% set point.
Got it.
And we're going to work off of that from here on out.
Right.
Of course, that set point will deviate, get uncalibrated over time, and you have to reset it again.
Now, when you fully charge the battery, so say like in our case, this customer was having this issue where the calibration was off. It thought they were full, but they weren't.
Yeah.
So if you just run the generator, in their case, you run the generator longer, you check that it's less than 2% of the battery's capacity.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, these things are fully charged. Will then the computer say, oh, that's full charged, reset and start again?
Exactly. Okay. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. Because the inverter in this case may say, oh, we're at 100%, but we're not really at 100%. So the client will think, oh, we're 100%. I don't want to waste any fuel. I don't want to overcharge my batteries. So they turn off the generator.
Right.
But in fact, the battery is only at 90%.
Yeah.
And then it goes along, and of course it's colder, so you've lost capacity, but you were only at 90%. And then, a couple of days later, they turn the generator back on. Not 90% is the battery gets up there again faster, but we're now at 90% of 90%.
Right, because it thinks 90% is 100, and then that keeps happening.
Yeah.
So in theory, you could be charging your battery to 60% eventually, and it thinks it's 100%.
Right.
Now, of course, with batteries, when they're not fully charged, that's where the murdering is happening.
Yeah, when you don't finish that absorb and you don't do that maintenance period, then things get uncalibrated, things get misaligned, and in the case of lead batteries, you don't get this desulfation action happening.
Right, the cleaning
happening. All of those things. I mean, you don't have to do this every time, but you typically, once a week. Again, depending on the usage of your system, you want to make sure that you get it to finish the absorb.
Right.
And now during the summer, it's not really an issue because we have enough sunlight, we have enough days that the sun will take care of getting your battery fully charged and into float.
Yeah.
But in the winter, and this always happens, here on the West Coast, at middle of November, when the days just get that much shorter, that the batteries are no longer getting fully through absorbed by the sun. And that's when you rely on your generator. Now, everybody wants to minimize their generator usage for
that's why they went solar.
Totally.
Yeah.
But by doing so, you can actually cause more problems. And this, again, always comes up around Christmas because people's batteries haven't been fully charged for, most of the month of December. They go up to their cabin around Christmas. Everything's out of whack. All of a sudden, they started using the batteries in a big way.
Yeah.
So they turn their generator on. It maybe gets up to 100, but it's not full, finished absorb. They turn their generator off.
Right.
For, obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then the problem gets worse. And then 2 days later, they call Shift and they call Steve. And basically I tell them, run your generator for 5 or 6 hours.
Right.
And let's get it fully up.
So this is my thought now. Can you overcharge a battery? Because I would be worried that I'm like, oh, okay, I need to fully charge it. I'm going to go to bed. Oh my gosh, I fell asleep. The thing's been running for all night and I ran out in the morning and turned it off. Have I ruined or hurt my battery?
Again, it depends on the settings. You can overcharge your battery if let's say you set the charge voltage too high.
Okay.
Or if you don't set the temperature compensation right. There's other ways of actually damaging your battery. But typically, if you have your battery settings correct and you run your generator for a long time, the worst thing that's happening is you're just wasting a lot of fuel.
Right. Okay. So the battery will protect itself.
Yeah, the inverter. Well, the inverter and the BMS should protect the battery.
Got it. Okay.
Assuming you have it set up right in the first place.
Right. Now, how does someone make sure their battery's set up correct to avoid that?
That would be, again, getting a professional to set them up in the first place, reviewing the settings. And again, it brings back to another point where those settings, that maybe Shift set on day one aren't the settings of the battery for its life.
Of course.
You're going to have to change typically seasonally.
Right.
You'll have to adjust your battery settings. And as your battery ages, you have to adjust the settings as well.
So, true statement that going off grid with batteries and solar is very similar to going off grid with anything else. It's something that you have to monitor.
Yeah.
You can't just forget about it.
Yeah. No. If you're going off grid, or even if you have a home battery backup system, you need to get familiar with batteries and how batteries work and how to charge batteries and how to take care of batteries.
What about, again, I'm just relating to things in my life. So my daughter for Christmas got a remote control car and she wanted to use it and I can't say no to her. So we just turned the thing on and she was using this little remote control car and then, and then it died. And then I was like, okay. And then I finally read the manual and it was like, make sure to charge before first use. And I was like,
Yeah.
Is that we've heard about these things with phones? Does that apply to lithium
Yes.
ion home batteries as well? And
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, a lot of times it's a good idea to actually make sure you go through three full charge discharge cycles, or I guess they'd be discharge charge cycles with your new batteries. And again,
okay.
because you don't know how long those batteries have been sitting on the shelf in the warehouse. And to make sure that they're calibrated and brought up to speed and balanced, it's good to go through it 3 times.
Will the battery, if you don't, so I got my new, whether it's lead acid or lithium, I got my new battery on my home and I just start using that on day 1.
Yeah.
Does the battery then think that's my max? Do you lose out on some top end?
Well, if it's a lithium battery, then yes, the BMS, the management system, the little computer on the top of the battery, might do exactly that. It might assume the wrong thing.
Okay.
And that's why you have to go through these 3 full charge cycles.
Right.
In fact, there's a lot of battery manufacturers, at least for renewable energy batteries, will say part of your warranty is you have to go through 3 times.
Right.
Just to get it properly set and calibrated.
Because that's part of the health as well, draining the battery. That's like an important thing as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. Lithium batteries like to live between 20% and 80%.
Oh, okay.
So they don't want to sit full all the time, and you don't want to drain them all the way down to nothing. So it's good to have them in there.
Right.
Lead acid batteries don't want to go down as deeply, but you definitely don't want them sitting there forever. So it's a good idea to just charge them every once in a while, again, because these, plaque will build up on their plates.
Yeah. So if they like to lithium ion, I got a power wall sitting in my house and it likes to live between 20 and 80%, but I also need to keep it charged into float.
Yeah.
So that's the delicate dance?
Yeah. Yeah. And in fairness to Tesla, they're pretty good at kind of maintaining that stuff. So if you look at your power wall closely, you'll actually see every once in a while it kind of discharges itself a little bit.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't go all the way down to 20, but it might go down to like 90%.
Right.
And then it'll charge itself back up again.
Okay.
And that's just something it does in the background.
Right.
Some of the other battery systems, we actually do that on purpose. Now that, we're starting to get time of use into places. So for example, at home, I'll discharge my batteries between 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock when we have the expensive electricity.
Every day?
Every day.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, my batteries are good for 6,000 cycles, right?
Right.
It'd be hard for me to use that up. So every day.
Right. That's something to think about as well. Like a warranty on a battery isn't necessarily a year thing. It's a cycle thing.
A little bit of both, but
Okay.
yes. Yeah. So it's mostly cycles. Lithium batteries, typically they do put like a 10-year warranty because people can't think in cycles.
Right.
I can't even. And I do this for a living.
Yeah.
Lead batteries are more so cycles. It'll say it's good
Okay.
for this number of
Oh,
cycles.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody tied to the grid with their power wall, do they have to be as on it with their batteries as somebody off grid?
Not really, because typically if you're on grid, your batteries are usually like in your garage. So the temperature is varying a lot less.
Yeah.
In addition, your batteries always have the grid to charge them. So if you don't have enough solar, the power wall or your EG4 system or your Solarc will always use the grid to finish the absorb and get the batteries into float.
So battery, generally, lithium ion will last longer tied to the grid than off grid?
I don't know if I want to make that statement.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think because there is the stability of being tied to the grid.
Yeah.
But yeah, not saying off grid batteries are going to die tomorrow for sure. We don't want to say that. Shout out Dale. Your system's good for a long time.
Yeah. And we often use the same batteries for battery backup as for off grid. So it's not like there's a huge difference between them. But yes, it's nice that you have the grid always available that can finish off the charging.
What if somebody's off grid? So lithium ion, like you said, grid tied, it's a pretty stable environment. It likes that. When somebody's going off grid, obviously this is something they should be thinking about. As to the type of battery, lead acid or lithium ion or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that'll depend on the environmental conditions.
Right. Where am I storing this?
Yeah.
all of these factors
All of
that
these
you wouldn't
factors.
even think about because it's a living, breathing person.
Exactly.
That's how we have to think about it.
Yeah.
Quickly, I know we're going to go back to our two truths and a lie again, and I know you got some great tips to share as well
Yeah.
for battery maintenance. In these emails that I was trying to wrap my head around, open loop, closed loop.
Right.
Yeah, and I was trying to picture that. I don't know if, in
Right.
5 minutes or less, you could touch on what that is like. And is that off grid or is that grid tied or?
It's both.
Okay.
So there's open loop communication and closed loop communication.
Okay.
So open loop communication is misnamed. It's basically no communication.
Oh.
Right. So the communication we're referring to is between the inverter and the battery.
Okay, so that's the loop.
That's the loop.
Conversation that the battery's happening with the inverter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, with a lead acid battery like you have in your car, right, there's no computer on top of it. It's always open loop because the battery and the inverter don't directly exchange information.
Okay.
The inverter's looking, as you pointed out, at voltage and other temperature and other factors to basically estimate the state of the battery.
Okay. Which could be more accurate then.
It could be. Yeah.
Right.
It could be. Yeah. Hold that thought.
Okay.
That's a good point. Now, closed loop is something you now see with lithium-ion batteries because lithium-ion batteries have this BMS or battery management system, which is another little computer sitting on top of the battery. And it's got all of these, analytics built into it. And the BMS can now talk to the inverter. So that's called closed loop. So we run a little network cable between the two of them, and the two of them talk to each other.
Okay.
Now, the nice part about that is you're getting a lot more accurate information about the state of the battery in the inverter.
Right. But it could be lies.
And the other thing that can happen is your inverter, you now have two computers talking to each other.
Right.
And in some cases, almost like double the chance of them getting out of calibration.
Right. That's the percentage of state of charge, SOC.
Yeah, exactly. So for the most part, it is better to have it closed loop if you can, because you're getting direct communication between the two computers. But we do see instances in the winter where if your BMS gets really out of calibration, it's sending the wrong information to the inverter. The inverter is using that information to stop and start the generator. So sometimes we do actually put a lithium-ion battery into open loop mode for the winter because you're right, voltage doesn't change as much or is more accurate, and use that. The other thing that can happen in closed loop mode is because you're now talking about a computer talking to a computer or software talking to software, and of course software always have bugs in it. And sometimes you can end up with a bug in one of the pieces of software that does something strange.
Right.
Like, for example, it'll go along and all of a sudden the BMS in the battery will just say, oh, I've just lost my calibration, and it'll go down to 0%.
Right.
And because it's gone to 0%, it's told the inverter the battery's at 0%. The inverter goes, oh my God, what's going on? And turns everything off.
Right.
Right. There's nothing wrong with the battery.
Yeah.
It's a bug in the BMS software that just closed.
Yeah. Because if there's one guarantee, it's that there are bugs in technology.
Exactly.
There will always be there. So then if I'm living off grid in the winter, do I just flip it to open loop and just hang out in open loop and just really keep my eye on things so that I don't have to deal with computers messing up?
I would say not necessarily.
Okay.
I would watch the situation.
Right.
If you're starting to see these kind of things happening, then yeah, we can switch to open loop.
Or just give it a good charge and make sure you're 2% of the capacity of the battery.
Yeah. And, make sure your inverter and your battery software are up to date.
Right.
All of those kind of things. But yeah, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule there, but it's nice to know that you have that option of going back to open loop. And that's what we, did with Dale and Sarah.
Right.
So their battery's in open loop mode right now.
Right.
And probably come middle of February, early March, we'll switch it back to closed loop.
Right. Kind of reminds me of like automatic versus manual in a car. It's like sometimes that automatic's great. You don't have to think about it. It's doing its thing, but man, there's nothing like a manual, drive, right?
Yeah.
Flipping those gears, using the clutch. Yeah. So before we get into tips, let's do the top 3 again.
Okay.
So let's review, class. Okay. 2 truths and a lie. So based off this conversation, Steve, I'm going to give it my best shot. SOC, state of charge, is an accurate measure of the fullness of a battery. It's not okay to turn off my generator when the inverter or BMS shows 100%. Fully charging my batteries on a regular basis is very important. Yeah, we got to get them into float mode. So that's a truth.
Yeah.
It's not okay to turn off my generator when the inverter or BMS shows 100%. That's true. And SOC is an accurate measure of the fullness of a battery. It is false.
There you go, Chris.
That is the lie, because that is the computers.
Yeah.
And if we rely on computers, the world is doomed.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going too far here. But they obviously work most of the time, the SOC. Yeah. It's just when, to your point, the environment changes, the sun isn't around as much. So you could basically look around and say, oh, we've had 4 days of rain and clouds. Yeah. I should probably just double check that my batteries are getting into float.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, here in Victoria, we've had a week of sun.
Yeah.
And I've checked all the systems and they're all really good.
Beauty.
But you're right. We might have 2 weeks of, maybe we'll get some snow, but cloud and rain. And then, it's important to kind of keep an eye on things, run your generator a little bit longer just to make sure it gets into float.
And if there's one thing you could say about somebody who's off grid or even has battery storage, is they're aware of their system. Off-grid life, it's not as, I don't know what to say, easy is the right word, or relaxed, but generally if somebody's off-grid, they already are that kind of person.
That's right.
That loves this kind of stuff, and they want to make sure everything's working.
Exactly. Yeah, I have to be more intentional when you're living off-grid.
You got some tips.
Yes. So tip number 1, fully charge your batteries weekly. In winter, this means running your generator longer and past the 100% mark in some cases. So don't turn your generator off early. Make sure you get to the float, so less than 2% of the capacity of your battery, and make sure that battery is fully charged and everything gets recalibrated. Tip number 2, you will need to update your charge parameters seasonally and then yearly.
This is what we talked about. Double checking those settings.
Exactly.
The installer may have set them here because it was installed in June.
Yeah.
We're sitting in November now. Double check.
Yeah, exactly. Those parameters that are set day 1 by your installer are not the ones that carry out through the life of your batteries.
Right.
You're going to have to update them over time. Number 3, observe the operating temperatures of the batteries. Right. So be conscious that, like I said, your battery at 0 Celsius loses 25% of its capacity over room temperature.
Right.
Lithium batteries, you're not supposed to run them below 0.
Right.
The other thing is a lot of lithium batteries are now coming with heaters in them. So those heaters need energy from someplace. So that's going to run your generator longer. Right. So, keep those things in mind. And winter is harder on batteries because we have less sunlight. Temperatures are colder. We don't necessarily like getting out of bed when it's cold in the morning.
It's like a car battery. Like, your car sits over the winter. The battery's probably going to be dead at the end of winter because it hasn't had the alternator going. Totally.
Yeah. Number 4, get educated. There's lots of online videos and lots of information. I highly recommend anything from a guy named Steve Higgins. He works for Charette or Rolls Battery. He is just one of the battery gurus out there. He might scare you a little bit with what he's saying, but he's an amazing resource. He's got some really great videos online.
And if you're spending, X number of dollars on batteries, you want to make sure that you're spending that time to learn about how to run them.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then last thing, if you have any questions, make sure you call your installer or call Shift, and make sure your installer knows what they're talking about when it comes to batteries, because that is the heart of your off-grid or your battery backup system.
What do you think about, we've touched on this before, buying stuff online, and I don't want to go too much into it, but I know you're big on educating the user. When you install a battery, it's big on education. Is that kind of industry standard, or do you find there's a lot of people that just get batteries in and they're none the wiser? You know what I mean?
I think there are a lot of salespeople who try and say it's a, maintenance-free battery.
Right.
There isn't really anything in life that's maintenance-free, right?
Yeah.
You have to put a little time and effort into maintaining everything and educating yourself about stuff, especially when you're talking about, a $10,000 or $20,000 investment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Education is at the heart of it all, and I think that's what we did in this episode. So,
I think so.
Thank you very much, Steve Unger, lead Microgrid Development. If you have any questions about, your batteries or microgrids or anything, definitely reach out to Steve S. Unger at shift.ca. Thank you very much for joining and continuously enlightening me, because there's so many topics and conversations around batteries. Every winter, there seems to be more questions.
Totally.
It's not boring.
It's never boring. No.
And it's a puzzle. I know you like that, don't you? Every time.
Yeah, for sure.
Beauty. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
The Solar PV Cast by Shift with Chris Palliser. To begin your solar journey, visit shift.ca.